Imagine sitting in a cold lawyer's office, watching your sister inherit millions, while you receive nothing but empty words, until the lawyer opens a second envelope and reveals a 30-year-old secret that tears your family apart and changes your destiny forever. If you are new to the channel, then please subscribe to the channel and like the video and tell us where you are watching from. If this story moved you, we'd love to hear your thoughts. So drop a comment below and let us know what you think. Now, let's jump into the story. The morning was gray and silent when Daniel arrived in the law office. The air carried the weight of grief and expectation. His grandfather, Arthur Mendez, had died only 3 days earlier at the age of 91. Arthur was not just a grandfather, he was a legend in the town, a man who built an empire from nothing, starting with a small workshop where he sold screws and tools. Over decades, that workshop grew into factories, businesses, and investments worth millions. Everyone admired Arthur for his discipline, his vision, and his ability to create wealth from hard work. Daniel, however, felt like the odd piece in the family puzzle. At 29, he had tried and failed to launch several technology startups. His ideas were bold, but his business sense seemed to falter at every turn. His parents never hid their disappointment. His sister, Luciana, on the other hand, was the pride of the family. She was beautiful, accomplished, and respected. She had studied medicine, married well, and carried herself with elegance. In family gatherings, Luciana always shined, while Daniel lingered quietly in the background. The will reading was expected to be a simple affair. Everyone already guessed how it would unfold. The mansion by the sea would go to the parents. Luciana would receive a large inheritance to match her polished image. Daniel, they thought, would get nothing more than advice about working harder. Still, he showed up because his grandfather had once made him promise to be present and calm. 2 months earlier, in the hospital, Arthur had taken Daniel's hand. "When I am gone, no matter what happens in the reading of my will, you must remain calm," his grandfather had said. Daniel had nodded, unsure why such a request mattered, but he had given his word. Now, as he entered the law office, the memory of that moment pressed heavily on his mind. The office was quiet and cold. The chairs were arranged in neat rows, facing the polished desk of Dr. Henrique, the family's longtime lawyer. Daniel's parents sat in the front row, their backs straight, their eyes steady. Luciana sat beside them, dressed elegantly in a light coat, her hair neatly tied back, her face showing both sadness and confidence. Daniel chose a seat in the back corner, as he often did, removed but still watching. Dr. Henrique entered the room with a thick envelope in his hand. His hair was gray, his glasses sliding down his nose, his steps deliberate. Everyone straightened when he sat down, unfolded the papers, and cleared his throat. "I, Arthur Mendez, in full capacity of mind, leave my assets as follows." The words carried the weight of years, and the room fell into complete silence. The first part of the will directed 5 million reais to a children's orphanage. It was a generous gift, one that brought a sigh of relief from Daniel's mother. There was still plenty of money left to divide, and she believed the family's future was secured. The estate, the lawyer explained, was valued at over 60 million reais. Then came the distribution. "To my granddaughter, Luciana Mendez, I leave the sum of 20 million reais." Luciana gasped, tears spilling down her cheeks. Her mother embraced her tightly, whispering words of pride. Her father nodded in quiet approval. "To my daughter, Helena, and her husband, Roberto, I leave the family beach house and 10 million reais." At that, both parents smiled with satisfaction. The legacy was unfolding exactly as they had imagined. And then came the moment Daniel had been waiting for. His name. "To my grandson, Daniel Mendez." The lawyer paused. He looked briefly toward the back of the room, where Daniel sat. Their eyes met for a second, and then the lawyer read the words slowly, as if measuring their impact. I leave my best wishes for success and the hope that he will earn his own wealth through his own hands. The words fell like a heavy stone in the silent room. Luciana stopped crying, her face shifting from joy to disbelief. Daniel's mother turned sharply, her lips forming a thin smile. "Is that it?" she asked aloud, unable to hide her satisfaction. "You get nothing?" Daniel stayed still. His heart pounded, but his face remained calm. He remembered his grandfather's words. "Stay calm." His father added coldly, "Maybe this will teach you a lesson. You were always the dreamer, always the rebel. Now you will understand the value of hard work." The humiliation pressed down on Daniel, but he did not move. He did not argue. He did not break. Then, unexpectedly, Dr. Henrique cleared his throat. He placed the first papers down and reached for another envelope sealed in dark wax. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, adjusting his glasses, "the will is not yet complete." The family stiffened in surprise. Daniel's mother frowned. "What is this?" she asked sharply. "An additional letter," the lawyer replied. "Instructions left by Arthur Mendez that must be read today. And, Mrs. Helena, I believe these words concern you more than anyone else in this room." The tension deepened. Everyone leaned forward. Daniel's pulse quickened. Something far greater than money was about to be revealed. The air in the lawyer's office grew heavier as Dr. Samuel Henrique broke the seal of the second envelope. The family shifted uncomfortably, sensing that something far more personal was about to be revealed. Daniel sat in silence at the back, his eyes fixed on the lawyer's hands. His mother, Helena, pressed her lips together, her face pale. Luciana glanced nervously between her parents, trying to read the room. Dr. Henrique cleared his throat and began. 30 years ago, my daughter Helena carried a secret, he read. She was pregnant with twins. The words landed like a thunderclap. Daniel blinked, confused. Twins? That did not make sense. Luciana was 3 years younger than him. They had never been called twins, never looked the same, never shared the same birthday. Luciana's voice broke the silence. That's impossible. I was born 3 years after Daniel. The lawyer continued steadily. One of the babies was born with a rare condition. In her fear, Helena made a decision she never told anyone about. She gave the child away. Helena's hands trembled as she gripped the arms of her chair. Stop this, she whispered harshly. This has nothing to do with the will. Dr. Henrique did not stop. The child, a girl, was placed for adoption in Sao Paulo. Her name today is Caroline Diaz. She grew up in a family that loved her deeply. She became a successful entrepreneur, building her own business in the technology sector. Daniel's heart pounded. A sister? A twin he had never known existed? His chest tightened as he tried to absorb the words. Lies, Helena shouted, standing up. Her voice cracked with desperation. Arthur is gone. He cannot defend this nonsense. But the lawyer reached for a folder on his desk. He opened it and revealed photographs, birth records, and signed adoption papers. He laid them out carefully for the family to see. Your father discovered the truth years ago. He hired investigators. He met Carolyn personally. He instructed me to share this today. The room fell silent, except for the sound of pages sliding across the table. Photographs showed a smiling woman with dark hair, intelligent eyes, and a determined expression. Caroline Diaz. Daniel leaned forward slightly. In those pictures, he saw features that felt strangely familiar. The same shape of the nose, the same curve of the smile. The resemblance was undeniable. Luciana's face flushed with anger. This is absurd. Why would grandfather hide something like this? Why would he keep her a secret from us? The lawyer's voice was calm, because he respected her choice to live her life without the burden of family scandals. but he also believed the truth must one day come to light. Helena lowered her head into her hands. Her body shook as she whispered, "I was young. I was scared. I did what I thought was best." Her husband, Roberto, stared at her in disbelief. "Best? You gave away your own child and never told me? Never told anyone?" His voice was thick with betrayal. Daniel could hardly breathe. The image of Caroline in those photographs burned into his mind. She was real. She was alive. And she had been hidden from him all these years. The lawyer continued reading. Caroline Diaz has already received her share of the inheritance, a sum of 25 million reais, entrusted to her directly by Arthur. He met with her once a month, without fail. He guided her as he once guided Daniel. She was part of his plan, part of his vision for the future. Luciana's hands tightened into fists. That doesn't make sense. The money doesn't add up. If she received 25 million and I received 20 and our parents 10, that's only 55 million. What about the rest? A faint smile crossed the lawyer's lips. Yes, there is more. And the final instructions from Arthur will explain everything. But before he could continue, Helena's voice broke through the silence. "Please, stop reading," she pleaded. "Don't do this here. Not like this." Dr. Henrique raised his eyes to her, steady and firm. "Mrs. Helena, the truth is no longer yours to hide. Your father wanted this revealed for the sake of his grandchildren, for Daniel, for Luciana, and for Caroline." The words cut through the room like a knife. Luciana turned her gaze to Daniel, her expression shifting from anger to suspicion. "So she is real. And if she exists, what does that mean for you, for me, for all of us?" Daniel stayed silent. Though his mind was racing, he thought of his grandfather's request, "Stay calm." Now he understood. His grandfather had known this revelation would shake the family to its core. The lawyer placed the folder back on the table and drew out yet another envelope. "There is one more part you need to hear," he said quietly. Helena lifted her head, her eyes wet with tears. "No, please, not this." "Yes," Dr. Henrique replied. "This is what your father asked me to reveal only after his death. It concerns Daniel directly." The room froze. Every eye turned toward him. Daniel's pulse thundered in his ears. The lawyer adjusted his glasses and prepared to read the next revelation. And for Daniel, the world was about to change forever. The lawyer unfolded the final set of papers slowly, his eyes moving across the tense room. The silence was thick, broken only by the faint hum of the office air conditioning. Daniel sat stiff in his chair, bracing himself. He knew something even heavier was coming. Dr. Henrique began to read. "There is another truth my family must face. Daniel is not the biological son of Roberto Mendez." The words dropped into the room like a thunderstorm. Roberto shot up from his seat, his face turning red. "What? What are you saying? That boy is not mine?" Helena's body shook. She clutched the edge of her chair, tears streaming down her face. "Please, stop. Don't say it." But the lawyer pressed on. "Daniel's biological father is Jorge Diaz, the man who adopted Caroline. This was kept hidden for nearly 3 decades. Daniel froze, his thoughts crashing against one another. George Diaz? The same man who had raised Caroline? The same man who had built a reputation as an honest businessman in São Paulo? Daniel's chest tightened. His entire identity felt like it was collapsing. Roberto turned to Helena, his voice trembling with anger. "You lied to me. For 30 years. You let me raise him as my son, never telling me the truth. How could you do this?" Helena covered her face with her hands. "I was afraid. I thought I would lose everything. I thought you would leave me. I told myself it was better this way." Luciana stared at her mother in shock. "So Daniel isn't even my full brother? All these years, and you never said a word?" Daniel sat silently. His mind went back to moments with his grandfather, those late-night talks in the workshop, the lessons about business. the way his grandfather looked at him with a depth of understanding no one else had. Suddenly, it all made sense. Arthur had known the truth all along. Dr. Henrique continued reading. Arthur discovered this truth 5 years ago. He confronted Helena, and from that moment, he began to prepare a different legacy for Daniel. Arthur knew the family would resist him, so he created a plan that could not be denied. The lawyer then pulled out another folder. Inside were company documents, contracts, and financial reports. Arthur built a secret technology company with Jorge Diaz and Caroline Diaz. The company is called Meditech Solutions. Over the past 5 years, it has grown into a leader in artificial intelligence for medical research. The company is valued at 100 million reais. The family gasped. Luciana shook her head in disbelief. A secret company? This is impossible. How could grandfather do all this without us knowing? The lawyer nodded. Arthur was deliberate. He wanted Daniel to inherit the company, but under one condition. Daniel must work side by side with Caroline Diaz for 5 years. Only then will the company legally transfer into his full ownership. If Daniel refuses, the entire fortune goes to charity. Roberto's voice softened as he looked at Daniel. So, he's not my blood, but he's still the boy I raised. No letter, no lawyer, no secret can change that. His eyes filled with tears. Daniel, you will always be my son. Helena sobbed quietly. I wanted to tell you, but I was so ashamed. I thought I was protecting the family. Instead, I destroyed it. Daniel listened, his heart heavy, but steady. He remembered his grandfather's words again, stay calm. It was clear now. His grandfather had been preparing him for this moment, for this very truth. Luciana spoke bitterly. So all this time, grandfather trusted you more than me. He gave you the real empire, while I got a share of money. Why? Why you and not me? Daniel looked at her, his voice quiet but firm. Maybe because he knew I wouldn't waste it. Maybe because he knew I had to prove myself, not just live on his name. The lawyer placed the papers neatly back on the table. That is the truth, and those are Arthur's instructions. The choice is now yours, Daniel. Accept the responsibility or walk away. But remember, the future of Meditech Solutions was designed with you in mind. The room sat in stunned silence. The air was thick with anger, betrayal, and confusion. Daniel closed his eyes for a moment, letting the storm pass inside him. When he opened them again, he felt a clarity he had never known before. His family had lied to him. His identity had been broken apart. But at the same time, his grandfather had given him a path forward. He was no longer just the failure, the dreamer, the forgotten grandson. He was someone chosen for a purpose greater than wealth. And outside that office, waiting somewhere in the city, was a sister he had never met. A sister who shared not only his blood, but his destiny. The air in the office felt heavy after the last words of the will. The family sat in silence, each one weighed down by secrets uncovered and truths they could not escape. But Daniel's life was already moving in a new direction. The name Caroline Diaz, the twin he never knew, echoed in his mind. The lawyer's final words confirmed what he had begun to feel deep inside. His grandfather had been preparing him, not for money, but for a mission. A few moments later, the lawyer opened the door. A woman stepped into the room. She was calm, but her eyes carried the weight of years. Her name was Caroline. As soon as Daniel looked at her, the world seemed to stop. The resemblance was undeniable. The curve of her smile, the shape of her eyes, even the tilt of her head. It was as if he were staring into a mirror with different lines, yet the same soul. Caroline's voice shook slightly. I have waited my whole life for this moment. I wanted to meet you years ago, but grandfather asked me to be patient. He said there would be a day when the truth would heal more than it would hurt. Daniel stood slowly, his steps heavy yet certain. When they embraced, it felt instant. The bond was there. the connection of two lives divided but never completely separated. Helena, their mother, watched with tears running down her face. "I was wrong," she whispered. "I thought I was protecting the family, but I only destroyed it. I gave you away, Caroline, because of a small birthmark. I was shallow. I was afraid people would judge me. I will never forgive myself." Caroline touched the faint scar on her face, almost invisible now. "I had surgeries when I was a child. My adoptive parents loved me as I was. They gave me everything I needed. I grew up safe, even though you abandoned me. You chose fear, but they chose love." Her words cut through the room, but she spoke without anger. It was truth, and truth had its own power. Roberto, the man who raised Daniel, placed a hand on his shoulder. "You are not my blood, but you are my son. No revelation can take that away. I raised you. I love you, and I will always stand by you." Daniel's throat tightened. He looked at Roberto and nodded. In the chaos of broken identities, those words gave him an anchor. Luciana sat quietly, shaken by everything. For once, the perfect daughter had nothing to say. Her wealth, her beauty, her pride, all seemed small compared to the truth that had shattered the family. In the months that followed, Daniel and Caroline began working side by side at Meditech Solutions. The company was already strong, but together, they brought it to new heights. Caroline carried discipline, clarity, and experience. Daniel brought creativity, resilience, and vision. For the first time, he felt worthy of his grandfather's trust. The company expanded across Brazil and reached into global markets, becoming a leader in medical technology. Under their leadership, Meditech Solutions created systems that help doctors diagnose diseases faster and save countless lives. The legacy was not just wealth, it was impact. As years passed, the family changed. Helena lived with regret, but slowly rebuilt trust with her children. Daniel forgave her, though the scars of the past remained. Luciana lost much of her inheritance in poor investments, but when she asked for help, Daniel supported her. Not out of duty, but out of compassion. Daniel also built a relationship with Jorge Diaz, his biological father. Jorge had never known the truth until Arthur revealed it. But when they met, Daniel saw honesty in his eyes. Over time, Jorge became a second father to him. 5 years later, Meditech Solutions was worth billions. But for Daniel, the true victory was not in numbers or profits. It was in the family he had gained. A sister who had been lost but found. A father who had raised him with love. A second father who welcomed him with open arms. And a mother he chose to forgive, even if he could never forget. One evening, as Daniel stood in the office overlooking the city, he thought about his grandfather's final words. Earn your own success. Live with purpose. Discover the truth. Now he understood. Inheritance was not just money. It was the strength to rise from broken pieces and create something new. The truth had broken them, but it also rebuilt them. Sometimes, the greatest gift is not what we are given, but what we uncover. And Arthur Mendez, even after death, had given Daniel the greatest inheritance of all. Not wealth, but an authentic life.